through the lot, now you know I'm coming through. When the growth look good on you, best believe they wanna screw now. I've been trying to climb, devil threw me in the dark. Baby, don't be insecure, you can still go make a mark like blow. Could never let them drain my soul now. Blow. Table turning like doorknobs, wow. Blow. I think I'm about to set sail. I'm a walking, living legend, walking with my chest out. Life keep dealing me cards, I keep feeling it.
Yes, people. What's going on, man? It's G, and we are back in the building. We are back today to have a little post-match review of England's game against Iran. Emphatic 6-2 victory on their World Cup opener. Good attacking display. Yeah, there were a lot of good points to take away from that game. A few things that obviously we'll dive into, and a few things that we'll take a look at, obviously, for England then heading into their second group game against the US of A. But firstly, guys, please make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you guys haven't subscribed yet. I'll be doing England reviews throughout the tournament. Let's obviously hope that they get past the 3 games, but obviously off to a great start. Make sure you're sharing with your mama, your mama's mama, your auntie, your uncle, your uncle's son, the whole nine, man. The whole nine, man. You guys already know what it is, but let's obviously dive into it, man. England, obviously, 6-2 victors, 6-2 victors. Crazy game, to be honest with you. I didn't think anybody actually expected that. I know I definitely didn't expect that. I didn't think that, Gareth Southgate was going to come out and have the team playing the way that they did. Now, of course, look. So let's just say this first, because I know obviously some people were obviously thinking this, myself included. At the end of the day, it was Iran. It was Iran. England were expected to win. Maybe not 6-2, to be fair. And I think we just didn't think that Gareth Southgate had it in his makeup to be able to have the team just playing the way that they did, and, so many different players were just, on song. And, something that I mentioned, in the preview was, everyone's talking about, the World Cup and it being mid-season and things like that. And, it could be a hindrance and, et cetera, obviously to club football. Now, obviously, if you're looking at it from a club's football perspective, then yes, of course, it's gonna hinder, certain teams, teams who are on a fantastic run of form, like your Newcastles or your Arsenals, for example. Maybe when they come back after the World Cup, things are a little bit disjointed and, et cetera. But if we're talking about from the World Cup's perspective, I feel like having a World Cup in the winter, it's a great idea, absolutely fantastic idea. And I would love to see more of those, to be honest with you, because what you've seen so far from the first group game is certain players who are already in form. So your Sakas, you've got your Harry Kanes, who's somewhat in some like decent level of form. Jude Bellingham, Declan Rice, these kind of players that you're watching, they're already in some level of club form. Gakpo yesterday for the Netherlands, even though the Netherlands, in my opinion, played very poor, Gakpo's in form. It's almost like you just bring that form that you're currently in mid-season anyway, you're just bringing it to international football. So don't be surprised. And again, it might not be for every single person, but don't be surprised. Yesterday, Iran's 2 goals, who did they come from? He's in form for Porto at this current moment in time. He has been in form. So these kind of things are things that we're probably going to see a lot more of throughout this tournament. And I think when you have a tournament in, at the ending of a season, it's a lot different. Players are going to be lackluster. Players are going to be tired. They've just done a slog of a season, potentially over 40 games that they've had to play, and the intensity that they've had to play these games at, and the importance of some of these games as well, So I feel like at the ending of a season, you've put yourself into that kind of position where it's had a break. Now we've got to come back in for such a prestigious tournament. It's very difficult for certain players, and hence the reason why we see a lot with England, in previous tournaments and throughout history, to be honest, since 1966, that when they do get to these tournaments, players are dead on their feet. and especially in certain heats as well, the players are so dead on their feet that it's almost difficult for them to, as it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're Wayne Rooney, if you're Michael Owen, if you're Harry Kane, if you're Steven Gerrard, if you're David Beckham, if you're Rio Ferdinand, Gary Neville. We can list all of them, Paul Gascoigne. It really doesn't matter. By the time that you get to an end of season, you're just dead. And a lot of other, European countries, especially, like your Germanys and your Spains, they have a mid-season break for a reason. For a reason, you know what I mean? Whether they're going to, whether it's for this, that, and the third, one of those reasons is so that when you do get to these international tournaments at the end of a season, your players are a lot more refreshed. Your players are a lot more able to, get themselves up for these kind of games and get themselves into this kind of mode where they can perform at the highest level that they can. With England, you see it all the time. It just looks awful, to be honest with you, half the time and to be honest, 90% of the time, since 1966, when you've watched England, and the 10% will probably be the last two tournaments for Gareth and when Gareth missed a penalty all those years ago. And it's like, when you sit there and think to yourself, why don't England do something similar? Why don't England then decide that maybe that's something that they might have to implement, just so that it might give the national team a better chance in these tournaments, at these end of season tournaments. Again, this is probably one of the reasons why England have failed, to be honest, miserably, throughout, tournament football since 1966. To be honest with you, haven't won a trophy. You can get to as many semi-finals as possible, but if you're not winning it, then it's all irrelevant, to be honest. So, yeah, man, it's one of those things. And for me, like I said, I just prefer to have this tournament. Well, not even prefer, to be honest. I like the fact that it's, in the middle of the season. And so far, we've had numerous amount of games, bar maybe the Qatar game and the Netherlands game. All the other games that we've seen, I think have been pretty decent. I think they've been pretty good, in terms of the quality of goals that we're seeing and some of the quality of football that we're seeing from some teams, and, hopefully it continues. Hopefully it continues. Hopefully I'm not coming back here at the ending of the tournament saying, bloody hell, I can't wait to have that switch back, But I digress. We'll get into England anyway. So England obviously beat Iran 6-2. Fantastic performance in an attacking sense from England. I feel that what I mentioned before in the preview in regards to how I feel England should play, I mentioned that England should probably, start with a potential 4-4-2 or 4-4-1-1, however you want to kind of describe it. And, one of the reasons why I said that was because I felt that with the attacking players that we do have, and I was close with my team prediction. I was close, I had Foden and Wilson in there. But instead, Gareth put in, let's say, swap the two. He had Sterling and Mount, as opposed to Foden and Callum Wilson. And I felt that when I was watching England, it was exactly what I wanted to see. It was exactly how I felt England could potentially attack this, this tournament. It's tournament football. As long as you get the 3 points or the win, ain't nobody care about the goals that you're conceding. I'll be real with you. This isn't club football where this might hinder you at some point in time in the season with the amount of goals that you're conceding. You could go through the entire tournament and win 4-3 every single game. I'm pretty sure at the end of the tournament, you'll be the one smiling. Do you know what I mean? So it doesn't really matter in regards to so much, obviously. It doesn't matter too much the goals that you're conceding, but of course it is in terms of the performance and how you're conceding certain goals against certain teams. And Gareth Southgate said it at the end of the game. He almost had a look of someone who wasn't even truly happy. The team have just won 6-2. England have won their opening game of the World Cup. Players on a high, fans on a high, and things like that. We saw some of the celebrations, and funnily enough, maybe it's just because of my makeup and things like that, but the way that Gareth described that game, in terms of how he just wasn't too happy with conceding the 2 goals, and he didn't really big up he bigged it up, but not as much as previous managers have done or would have done in that situation. I loved it. So that is exactly what you want to see. That is something that, keep that going, Gareth. Keep that going, because it just shows me that you're not easily excited. You're not easily, what's the best word I can potentially use? Yeah, I'll say excited. You're not easily excited by these kind of games and these kind of things, because the reality is, that within the 6-2, if people actually watch the game back again, you will also notice that there were certain things about that come up against a better team, England might not win that game 6-2, and potentially could even lose that game, depending on the obviously quality of opposition that you face. Like a France, for example, an Argentina or a Brazil or even a Belgium or things like that. You come up against those kind of teams. Certain things that were happening with England in terms of in defensive transitions, how Taremi scored his first goal. Little things like that, England just have to be a little bit careful of. And I'm hoping that means that Gareth's going to go away, train with the lads and kind of potentially minimize those risks. Of course, it's a game of football. At some point in time, you're going to, concede a chance, unless you're, prime Barcelona and, you keep the ball for, 89 minutes of a game, which England didn't do yesterday in terms of their style of play. But at the same time, against better opposition, just little things. And again, to that point, I like that. I like that from Gareth, because England and England fans, I think they just get a little bit too overexcited with certain things. And I just think that with a game like yesterday, that was the kind of game where you needed almost near perfection in order for you to come away from that game and thinking, right, here we go, England can potentially do this, or England might be able to play like that, or and et cetera, et cetera. But obviously that's just the thinking hat on. That's just the striving for better kind of attitude that I have, and hopefully Gareth is now, not even now because he's a manager and he's a professional manager, but hopefully that's just what the team are going to try and adopt. We have to do better. We shouldn't be conceding 2 goals like that. Penalty obviously was a bit wishy-washy, of course, but at the same time, they were having chances. Pickford made a really, really good save, in that second half, and score that. Now it's 6-3. Now the game doesn't look, obviously it's still 6 goals regardless, but there were other little bits of play where you just thought to yourself, England, just be careful. Just be careful. You're going to come up against better teams than Iran, even though they are ranked 20th in the world, but you're going to come up against better teams than Iran. So just make sure that you can minimize those risks, and then that you and the team will be able to move forward. But obviously today, don't know, guys, let me know in the comments who you thought was the man of the match for the game. I know Saka won the official World Cup man of the match. Some people had Bellingham. I think he was fantastic yesterday as well. And we'll take a quick look at Jude Bellingham here. If you check his, obviously this is the rating by FOT mobile app. This is the rating, obviously, that they gave him, 8.6. I think most of these rating cards, basically gave these guys more or less the same kind of rating. But when you look at this, played 90 minutes, look at his accurate passes, 96%, made 96 passes, completed 92. That when I saw that, I said, all right, cool. This is someone who, was he kept the ball very well. Passed the ball, obviously, clearly at 96%. He passed the ball really, really well. But I think that what you saw from Jude Bellingham, for me, was a complete midfielder's performance. Now, again, we take it with a pinch of salt because it's Iran. But if we judge the player in the game in itself, which is all we can do, when I saw that performance, I said, yeah, this is a guy who's 19 years old. I think he's the first teenager since my striker, Michael Owen, to score for England in a World Cup game. And it's kind of befitting, to be honest with you. That performance all round, getting up and down the pitch, helping out in attacking phases, helping out in defensive transitions, making sure he was always available for the pass, making sure that he was always there to, get back and help the defense, and, and also even try to potentially get beyond the striker, which obviously we saw, for his goal. Brilliant header, brilliant header. I think that with someone like Jude Bellingham, first and foremost, that price just went up. And if he continues scoring goals, and if he continues playing the way he did yesterday, that price is going to go up and up and up and up. And Dortmund are sitting there probably absolutely smiling because they know they're probably sitting there thinking, keep scoring goals. Do you know what I mean? Keep scoring, keep doing your thing. Because if you keep doing your thing, that's even better for us. And to have a goal scoring midfielder, it's very, very hard to have in modern day football, just because of how teams play and their tactics. And most of the top teams around Europe will probably adopt a 4-3-3 kind of formation, usually within that. I wouldn't say you have, other than obviously Kevin De Bruyne. But if you take out Kevin De Bruyne, most of them, their midfield is either a workaholic, like a Liverpool midfield, or like a kind of like a Bayern midfield. But obviously Bayern, I guess, with the way that they implement their style, where they have someone like a Jamal Musiala who's able to kind of break beyond the striker and get himself some goals as well. He kind of has a free role. If you're not one of those teams, like I said, you've got technical players in the middle of the park. And the technical players are there more for the assist, or more for just keeping possession, or like a Barcelona, for example. Yes, they'll chip in with a few goals, but I feel like Jude Bellingham is and can be a very good goal scoring midfielder. Depend on how he's used. If we're looking at, say, for example, obviously Liverpool, for they're potentially looking at someone like a Jude Bellingham in our type of system. Klopp would have to give him a lot more of a free rein. He couldn't tie him down to the way that Klopp plays, because if you do that, you're, again, like Klopp has done with many players, you're going to stifle what he's actually good at. And once you stifle what he's good at, yes, in your eyes, you feel like it's for the betterment of the team, but the reality is then you're not really seeing the player that you initially bought. So that would obviously be a conversation between Jude, Klopp, whoever signs Jude Bellingham, to be honest with you. I feel like in other teams he would flourish very, very well, like a Manchester City, for example, where I feel like he'd have a lot more license, a bit like a Bernardo Silva, or previously like a David Silva or Phil Foden, where they've just got the license to kind of almost roam, or, within that middle of the pitch, or like Foden on the wings, to be able to do their thing. But I guess it remains to be seen. But in terms of Jude Bellingham for England yesterday, great performance. Really put in a shift. Really put in a shift. But the other guy, the other guy next to him, which was obviously Declan Rice. He's another player I wanted to take a look at, and he's another player that many clubs are on the lookout for. Declan Rice for me was equally as important as Jude Bellingham. Now, I was never, and I'll say this here, I was never Declan Rice's biggest fan, prior to, would I say, the last two, this season and last season. I feel like I've started to watch Declan a lot more, and I'm a hard judge of character. Oh, not even a character. I'm a hard judge. I'm someone who's not just gonna sit there and like most fans do. Oh my goodness, he's fantastic. He played one good season. To me, that's a one season wonder. We've got to see this at a consistent level. And what we've seen from Declan Rice in the last two seasons, he's just gone from strength to strength, and now I feel like he's operating at a level where you can say, now I think you can get into that world-class player. He's not a world-class player at all by any means, but you're heading there. With these kind of performances. And I think the two players, he did play a 4-3-3 with Mason Mount in there as well. Mason Mount was he was almost like the utility man. He was the kind of guy who I almost felt like he had a free role, because he was kind of running around everywhere. He didn't perform as good as, obviously, in my opinion, as Declan Rice or Jude Bellingham, but I don't think he actually needed to. I felt like what he was probably asked to do in comparison to Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham was kind of just like, like I said, make yourself available. You could also be the trigger point or the trigger for the press, for example, when we need to try and win that ball back, which then allows Jude Bellingham and Declan Rice to get themselves back into the right positions to then be able to close off any channels, for example. But then Mount was then allowed to kind of play in and around the area of the attackers, to be honest with you. But looking at this, obviously you can see here, obviously England obviously set up with four at the back. You can obviously see Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham are both highlighted. And that was what I felt that both of these two did very, very well. And then obviously I think you can see next to in between the two players, you can see obviously Mason Mount, Raheem Sterling on the left, and into Raheem Sterling's, I guess, you guys right, and Raheem Sterling's left. You can see, I think that was Mason Mount potentially there, just in that kind of gap. But when you're looking at Rice and Bellingham, you can see the two worked in tandem, and I loved watching it, because it was like Rice would drop off, which would then allow Jude Bellingham a little bit of space. Now, in this passage of play here, Stones is going to pass that ball, obviously, to Jude Bellingham. Jude Bellingham's in a world of space. From Jude Bellingham, he can either turn, go back into, go then start an attack, or he can pass it into Declan Rice if he needed to, because the reality is both the players in either side of Declan Rice are going to be automatically drawn to the ball. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, he's taken Rice completely out of the game, meaning he can actually turn. So he's got a few options. That just depends on how he sees fit and, what then happens next, etc., etc. But there are a few things that he could potentially obviously do. And I think, as you can see there, I feel like, that Jude Bellingham's then going to, turn and then, get on the attack. But it then leaves Declan Rice in some space. But Declan Rice is still in his sixth position, which I liked. You look at this shot here, again, same thing is going to happen. Now, on the left, Harry Maguire is just about to receive the ball from Declan Rice. Look at the gap between Declan Rice and Jude Bellingham. Again, both are in positions to either receive the ball, or one of the two will drop off. Mostly Declan Rice, because he's in that sixth position. But when you're watching it, you're thinking to yourself, yes, now we can see that you both got yourself some options. Now, with those options, it then depends on how you see fit and how you want to move forward. But when I was watching it, and I was thinking to myself, yeah, this is really, really good play. It seems like they both have an understanding. A lot of people are talking about, Calvin Phillips and, Declan Rice, being in the middle of the park, and, those two forging a good partnership. But I think when you've got Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips, who I still don't agree should have, been chosen for the World Cup, but chosen he was. When you do have Calvin Phillips and Declan Rice in the middle, the problem is none of them are really attacking. None of them really break the lines, and none of them are really goal-scoring players. They're both neat on the ball. Declan Rice can dribble forward, but he's not known for scoring goals. Do you get what I mean? Declan Rice is someone I feel that can keep the ball, but can also break lines if needed. He almost reminds me, and I know it's going to, again, referring back to Liverpool, he almost reminds me of like a Matip, someone who you almost don't even expect them to be able to just dribble forward, but they do it. And when they do it, it's almost like teams don't know what to do next, because they're like, shit, if I go to him, then that's going to leave space for Jude Bellingham, for example, or for one of the wide players, or for someone else. But at the same time, do we keep just dropping off, hoping that he's either going to take a shot or he's going to run out of, general space to be able to do something? And with Rice's good, ball dribbling skills, I feel that the two work very, very well in that middle. And again, you just need a third midfielder who's almost just acting in that free role. And yesterday, it just happened to be Mason Mount. It could be Phil Foden next game. He might want to change it around. Could even be Raheem Sterling potentially with a Jack Grealish or Foden out on the wings. He can chop and change it. And with England's attacking talent that they have, probably one of the best in the tournament, it's beggars belief, man. It's beggars belief as to how and what Gareth Southgate wants to do, what he can do. So it's quite exciting to see. But for me, I really, really liked Rice's display. I think it went almost a bit unnoticed. If you check out his heat map here, he was everywhere, bro. He was totally everywhere. SofaScore only gave him a 7 out of 10, but I would have given him a bit higher, because I felt like if you're giving Jude Bellingham around 8.6, like I said, right, maybe just because he scored a goal, but, Rice was equally as important. Yes, there was a couple of times I think he lost possession, trying to dribble, but that's going to happen. And that is almost the risk that you take with someone like Rice, because he's going to be the deeper of the midfield three. That is the risk that you're going to take. If he loses the ball, then of course, the opposing team are going to be on the England's back line. But the reality is, you don't really mind that, because more often than not, someone like Declan Rice is going to be able to get himself out of these kind of, situations. But yeah, it's like I said, man, I really, really like that performance from Declan. And I've really, really liked, what he's been doing over the last 18 months, to be honest with you. Even though it is only for West Ham, I feel like his next move is going to be vitally important for him. He needs to pick the right team. Him and Jude, to be honest, they need to pick the right teams. They need to pick teams that are going to utilize their strengths really, really well. So it's going to be interesting to see, you know, what happens with both those players. Now, obviously, we know Bukayo Saka scored 2 goals yesterday. Like I said yesterday in my preview, for me, he's the best right winger that England have, someone who can cut in. We know Marcus Rashford, obviously, he came off the bench and scored for Saka. But when I'm watching the way that England want to play, I feel like Saka it will supplement that pretty well. It's quite interesting as well, because I also look at that and think to myself, you know, someone like a Trent or Trippier, to be honest with you, players who are very good with their delivery, they will benefit a bit more from that. Wasn't a great game from Trippier, by the way. Did get caught out a couple of times, and his defending. There was a few questions to be asked there, but when you're a player or when you're a winger who can cut in the way that Saka can and can, you know, be as deadly as Saka can, you know, you as a right back, you're going to love that, because then he'll give you all that space down the other side and down on the outside, to be honest with you, you know. And if you're Trippier or Trent, who've got fantastic deliveries, you're going to love that. You're definitely going to love that. And it'll give you enough space to be able to pick out someone, you know, in the box, if that's what, you know, you're trying to do. But the third player I wanted to take a look at, who I felt didn't score, got himself 2 assists, but was equally as important as the other guys who did actually score, was Harry Kane. Look at Harry Kane's heat map. Didn't even really get in the box, to be honest with you. Didn't even get in the. But bearing in mind, guys, if you see that arrow, the arrow is pointing that way. You know, it's pointing. That's the way that England, you know, in terms of the way England were shooting. Look at his position. Look, there was even points where he was playing as the 6, picking, you know, dropping that deep, you know, to affect play. But as you can see it there. His main spot was just to the left, a bit further up to the left of the center circle. That's where he was picking up the ball mostly. And the reason why he was picking up the ball is because, again, Sterling and Saka would break beyond, you know, Harry Kane. And once they break beyond Harry Kane, it leaves the team in that kind of free for all, in terms of you've almost got then 2 strikers up top, because once they break the lines and they've obviously gone beyond the striker, it then allows Harry Kane to just almost drop in, and he's there and ready and available for the cutback. And again, with Harry Kane's technical ability, and Harry Kane, you know, able to pick out a pass and, you know, and also shoot from the edge of the box, but because he's so good at being able to pick out a pass, I look at him and I think to myself, that might be the role for you moving forward. You don't necessarily have to be the guy to get the goals. England should try and utilize their wingers a lot more, because their wingers are so fast. So when you've got someone like Harry Kane who likes to drop deep a little bit and affect play in almost that number 10 role, perfect for the wingers. Like I said, it's that Liverpool, Manchester City kind of football. And I think yesterday what we saw from England is it almost resembled a club side in terms of the players looked like they've been playing together for years. You know, they understood the roles that they needed to do for the game. You understood the instructions. You know, everything was a lot more fluid. Again, I'm not going to get too excited because it was a run that they were playing yesterday. But from what we saw in terms of their attacking passages of play, I was very, very impressed. And again, if they can take that onto the USA on Friday, you know, you never know. USA are a very good team, by the way. Even though I know they drew 1-1 against Wales, they've got good passages of play as well. And I think that up against England, they're going to be really up for it. So England are really going to have to be careful how they kind of attack that kind of game, because USA have got better quality than Iran. So they will be able to pick you off at some point in time. So you just got to be a little bit careful with that. But when I was watching England yesterday, like I said, really, really good attacking passages of play. Now we move on, obviously, to the bad side. And it's the defense. You know, was on the Jerry James show last night. Guys, if you haven't seen the World Cup review, make sure that you check it out. But you know, when these guys were talking, you know, about England, and Jamie Phillips football chat, he was speaking about England's defense and how he wasn't really too happy, you know, with the performance of England as a whole. I kind of sat back afterwards and I kind of deeped what he was saying, and I was like, you know, I can hear what you're saying, because even if Gareth is even telling you that as well, that then shows you that there must be something within the games that maybe fans, you know, to the naked eye are not really seeing, to be honest with you. Again, fans are not going to care if the team are winning 6-2, but if there are certain things within the game that you feel that could be improved upon, then of course, you know, you're going to speak on it. And I felt like with England's defensive transitions, defensive awareness and positional sense, you know, a lot of questions got to be asked. You know, Harry Maguire had a decent game, and this is the maddest thing. Had a decent game, but at some point in the game, you just know that this guy is going to do something, or he's going to, you know, be at fault for something, you know, and he was at fault for the first goal. You know, track your man, track your runners, go with the runner, go with the runner. Do you know what I mean? He let his runner go, Taremi scores. You know, and then, you know, Harry Maguire obviously then came off, and I don't actually know what the actual reason was, but regardless of that, up to that point, he had a decent game. You know, he wasn't poor, and you can almost see why Gareth Southgate keeps persisting with him. On top of the fact that England don't have that many great defenders to put in there alongside Jon Stones anyway, because Jon Stones had a decent game himself. Very assured performance, brought the ball out well. Both him and Harry Maguire did bring out the ball well. Harry Maguire almost scored as well with a header. Now, he's a threat from set pieces. So that's another thing that England probably are looking to when they play someone like a Harry Maguire. From set pieces, he's very, very good. You know, hit the bar yesterday, could have scored. He scored in other games from set pieces. So he can be a threat, you know, on the attack. But when we're talking about concentration, when we're talking about, you know, his lack of pace, you know, so players of a somewhat decent pace will be able to always get in behind him. That's where you're looking at it. You know, Trippier, as I said, didn't really have the best of games. You know, there was a lot of talk, obviously, between Trippier and Trent in regards to, you know, who should start, who's the best person to start. And, you know, a lot of Liverpool fans, as they do, you know, they were talking about, you know, Trent being this generational talent and he has to play because he's this and he's that. And, you know, I was sitting there, I was thinking, everything you're saying isn't necessarily wrong, so to speak. It's just a case of when you've been as poor as him this season. And one thing that, you know, fans need to understand about Trent Alexander-Arnold, his main / only key attribute is being able to provide assists, get forward, and create chances for his teammates. He hasn't even really been doing that this season. So if he can't do that, he can't then play, because defensively he's all over the gaff. So we can knock out the defensive side of things, and we can say, okay, cool, no worries. If you're not good defensively, not a problem. What else are you offering me, though? You know, what else is there that you're going to give me? Well, your attacking display hasn't even been that good this season. Don't think he's provided an assist all season. You know, and that is his key. That is Trent Alexander-Arnold. That's what makes him the player that everybody, you know, knows and loves. So if he's not even doing that well, it makes sense that Trippier, you know, starts in at right back. To be honest with you, you know, I have no problems with that, to be honest. And like I said, I just don't think he deserves to start. I mean, if he didn't start against Iran, then it's going to be unlikely that he starts against, you know, unless England are able to win their first 2 games, then maybe that Wales game doesn't then become important. If England can top the group regardless of whatever result they get, then maybe Trent can then come on. He could have potentially come on yesterday for a couple of minutes, but I don't think Gareth Southgate wanted to really change that defense too much, to be honest with you. I felt like he wanted to keep things at the back exactly how they were. At the end of the day, in an attacking sense, it was working. So why change it? Do you know what I mean? Why change it? But, you know, as I said, all of these kind of things, that's just the negative side of things. That's just the perfectionist in me, in you know, in managers and stuff like that, who are going to look at it and think, good work. I would say good work. In an attacking sense, fantastic. But as an overall, good work, you know, from England. I'd probably say I'd give them a 7.5/8 out of 10 for that kind of performance. No higher, because they conceded 2 goals. And there were a few questions to kind of be asked of the defense within the game. But as a whole, players like Bukayo Saka, Jude Bellingham, Harry Kane, you know, played really, really well. Raheem Sterling, I felt like he had like almost a meaty kind of, you know, out of 10, I probably would have given him like a 7, if I'm being honest, because it wasn't that great, but he was effective. Got himself a goal. His goal was beautifully taken, by the way. That was such a great ball by Harry Kane in the middle. Again, this is what he provides. He's someone who will drop out to the flanks. He'll drop to the left. He'll drop to the right. He'll drop into that number 10 position. And once he starts doing all of that, and, you know, the centre backs of the opposing team don't know, you know, what to do with him, he can be really, really effective, really, really effective. But obviously, that was England, 6-2 winners against Iran. They move on to their game against the USA in top of the table, +4 goal difference. USA and Wales are obviously on 1 point. So I believe if England do win their next game against the USA and Iran and Wales play out a draw, then England obviously will qualify, and they should actually qualify in top position as well, which is obviously fantastic going into, you know, the round of 16, because then it means you face the second place. I think, not 100% sure. I think it would be second place in the Netherlands group. So, you know, depends on who comes second there. Again, you know, that Netherlands group, got to be careful. You know, whether it's going to be Holland or Senegal, both teams will give you trouble. And, you know, again, we'll see how England obviously progress throughout the tournament. But as a day one goes, come on, man, like that was a good day one from England. So yeah, hopefully it continues, and we can see some more, you know, brilliant attacking display. That's obviously me. Done with my post-match review, guys. Make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, make sure you share this out to every single individual that you know. We just passed 100 subscribers, thank God. Obviously want to big up Jerry James, Jamie Phillips, Ish, Saint, Roms, you know, Monts, Big Six Bands, all of these guys, man, helped me kind of start this channel, and have obviously helped push everything forward. So guys, make sure you're following all of those guys. I'm G, and I'm out.